So as we go into this process, yeah, we thought we were getting a puppy and it turned out to be like a barracuda. I don't know. So if you look at those salary schedules, every single time there is a change where somebody moved from one grade to another, that meant that Kathy Hart had to actually change the salary because at this point, people were already getting paid out of the previous account. So all of that had to be rectified constantly. So that had to be rectified before Mike Duva, who's our new accountant, who has been fabulous. I'm surprised he has not run from the building screaming. Or if he has, he's done it very quietly, so it's all good. He promises to come back tomorrow. But then he has to do all of those reclasses. So it's a lot of people involved. So once again, as Linda said, I want to thank all those people because they made this happen, which was great. So every single time you see those changes, what we wanted to do is really be able to bring you the staff at each building. And after the subcommittee meeting on Wednesday, we knew there were still a few glitches. I called the sites personally, talked to the secretary. I said, I need 15 minutes of your time. I'm going through every single person in your building. I need you to yay or nay on this person. So, and then we also yay or nayed at HR. So we made sure everybody was where they were supposed to be at this point in time, as Linda's saying. The difficulty is, particularly with our paras, they may come and go and move just because they have the right to still apply for other positions in the district. So we will be keeping track of everybody who's moving where. So now it's correct. So if somebody moves, we'll keep this up to date. So then as you go through, you'll see all the certificated staff, the non-certificated staff. It's been actually a fascinating process in kind of a sick way because we were able to find out what people were paid. So like the custodians, I didn't know that they had longevity weekly and annual. And then nurses get a longevity payment once a year. So that's in this budget. You'll see at the very end, custodians, for some reason, they get weekly and annual longevity that's taken out of their site budget, but the way it was set up, in district-wide, you'll see the nurse's longevity, the para's longevity, and the secretary's longevity. I don't know why. I've learned not to question anymore. That's just the way it is, so we want to make sure that it was documented. So you won't see that longevity until you get to the very end in district-wide. So you see your district-wide, I'm not going to go over each and every one. And then at the very end, you actually see, because before we didn't have our student services on page 40 out of 50, you have all the student services people, and for example, like our nurse support one-on-one, we put in there if they were needed, not needed, at this time they're not needed. TAG is in that district-wide now, because that person services all 5 elementary schools. And I think more importantly, the district-wide salary finally got cleared up. So on, where's it start? Let's see, page 42, you see the whole breakdown. So you see what administrators at central office, and we moved Dave out of maintenance because he's part of our central office leadership. So we wanted to make sure that he was there as well. Our travel stipends, the non-union administrator annuity, which for some reason was in early retirement. I don't understand it. We wanted to clean it up. So we had to move a lot of things. There you see the SMART goal stipend and what that actually is, the site administrator annuities, what the secretaries do and make at district, nurse longevity, union longevity for secretaries, para longevity, and then we're pretty much done. So most of the changes and transfers were grade to grade, as you can see in the report, school to school. So teachers, para, nurses, custodians moves, updates of master's degrees, longevities, and stipends. But then some things that got offset by being able to hire people at a lower rate offset things that were never added, like athletics, transportation, retirement contributions, which are not early retirement. Things that got taken out of the wrong line item, like our THS, I had to document it because it's confusing. THS PE teachers, which were out of the health line, which they shouldn't have been because the money was in PE. Like I said, administrative annuities that were in early retirement, which made no sense. So it took a while to clean it up, but we feel really good about this. You have the grant information. Everything tied out to our budget amounts, which was wonderful, in the expense budget performance report. So we're excited going forward because we've talked a lot about what we're going to do differently in terms of the process and procedures.
Does you have one other thing on this?
Sure.
The other thing that we were trying to accomplish with this is when they were lumping everything in, not you guys, but in the past, when they were lumping everything in, it was overstating everyone's salaries. And it also was, if you look on page 3, this year happens to be 53 weeks for our secretaries and custodians. So what happened in the past is that would get lumped into the salary in years that happened, and then when it was brought forward, it would be brought forward as a 53rd week when it was only 52 weeks. So by doing this, it's saying this is that secretary's salary, this is their pay for that 53rd week. So that when it's brought forward next year, we can see. And it doesn't look like if a teacher's getting a bunch of stipends, that their salary is this when it's actually this. So now you should be able to, and I've looked at quite a lot of them, you should be able to match them more in line to what the contracts say, because you're only putting pure salary and salary. So that was kind of the thought process behind splitting it out all like this. But again, it was a lot of work to do it, but it's going to be much easier for us to see going forward all the different types of compensation everyone's getting. So that was just added.
The other piece that was very helpful, being able to sit in on the subcommittee, the personnel subcommittee, we did find, like Dan was saying earlier, in your very efficient, timely meetings, they did bring up the whole issue of not having enough money in sub-pay for paras or for teachers, so then we were able to also include that in this budget. So it really was very timely, so that worked out perfectly.
We did focus, I just want, we will be putting together the list to bring to the budget committee. As far as the line item transfers, we really focused on the salaries. That was our sole focus. So we're trying to, as you know, I tend to be methodical, and I'd rather do things a little slow, but get them right, because I didn't want to come to you and say, okay, this is really it. Oh, never mind. No, this is really it. Oh, never mind, this is really it. I couldn't do that. And Susan wouldn't do that.
Not after last year.
Even if I had threatened to beat her, she wouldn't have done that. So we're very, very comfortable with this, and we will have the list of the line item transfers for the budget committee. One thing we also have been focusing on is, as we've gone through the process, we are trying to identify where are there flaws in the process. And Joe and I laugh about this HR authorization form because I hate the form because it travels all over, and then I get it and I'm, what? What is this? And it's right. It's not that it's not right. It's just we're thinking that that's a really good vehicle for us to use to be able to record these changes early on in the process. And so that's one of the things we're looking at is at what point in the process do we use the information we have to update the salary schedule. So that's one small piece of the process that we're looking at. Long range, we understand that there is an inherent problem with having 3 different systems that record your personnel information. We recognize that. And so long term, we know we need to look at how do we do that? How do we fix the fact that we have an HR system, a payroll system, and New World? How do we make those talk to each other effectively? How do we make them talk to each other correctly so that we are not constantly having to do this kind of manual human intervention type reconciliation? We don't ever want to do this again. As enlightening as it has been, we never want to do this again. So that's a long range plan. Moving forward with what we're looking at as far as the 2016-17 budget is we will be giving these budgets, once we've identified exactly where the line item transfers are, exactly what the budget amounts need to be. We're going to be sharing these with the site leaders, the building principals, and the site managers on the 6th. We have our first Friday meeting at central office with our building principals and district leadership. We'll be sharing the budget information at that point in time so that we can talk about it, we can see where we are. We are going to be asking for preliminary ideas and thoughts and suggestions and what have you for the site budgets by December 1st. We know that's short, and I'm going to apologize out loud in public to our site leaders right now, but we really want to be in front of this. We want to be the horse, I guess, as it were. And then from the 2nd of December to the 18th, I plan to meet with each of the site leaders to talk about what their plans are for the budget. I'm hoping that what their process will be, and this is what we'll talk about on the 6th, will be that they talk to the folks in their buildings or their sites and say, okay, what do we need? What kinds of things do we need? And again, it's preliminary, because one of the things that I think has been missing from our budget planning process and from a lot of districts that I see is that, again, talking about that cart and horse thing, it's a cliche, however, we need to develop what is our district as a vision, what's our vision of what we're going to be as a district? Where do we want to go? What do we want to be? How are we going to get there? What do we need to do? Because our budget should support our vision. Our budget should support what we think we want to be as a school district. Not, we're going to be the school district that our budget says we can be. Because right now, our budget is not saying we're the school district we can be or even want to be. So, and I think we need to be able to come forward to the board with a vision, with a plan, with something that says this is where we're going and this is what we need to get there. And at that point, and I already said this to the budget committee, at that point we can do a much better job at managing the budget, because the question becomes very simple. Does this expense support the vision? Does it support our goals? And if it doesn't, we don't do it. We don't spend money on something that doesn't support our goals. So that's where we're heading for. So we're looking at by the 18th, we're hoping to have all the meetings with the site leaders completed so that district office can put together a preliminary budget before Christmas break, by the 23rd. Because we'd like to present the preliminary budget to the budget committee by the 13th of January. To say this is what our preliminary budget, where we think we're going to go, what we think we're going to need, and here's why. And then on the 17th, assuming that we have sufficiently tweaked the budget in the budget committee, that we would come to the full board at the first meeting in February, which perhaps is the 17th, with our full budget proposal, so then we can start working on how do we want to, what do we need to tweak, what do we need to do, but that you would have what our vision and goals are, how the budget will support it, what our challenges have been with the budget this year to date, what we need going forward, and also looking at how the budget supports the vision, so we can now start looking at what do we really want to do, what do we do with it, so that we're hoping to have it pretty much in shape for you by the 17th of February. That's our goal. That's what we have written on the board, and that's what we're shooting for. So that's the plan going forward. So that's pretty much budget from 2014-15 through 2016-17. That's what we have for the budget.
That will be your finalized superintendent's budget.
Right. That's our goal.
That you'll hand to the board
And say,
for us to take.
this is my wish list. Yep.
Yes.
Just a quick question on the salary schedule on page 43. I see two names on here of people that are no longer employed at the district
Right,
that I know of.
they still get it. They still got the SMART goal. They got it approved of that. It's for the previous year, but they didn't come out until this fiscal.
They're paid in July for the previous year.
I also have a question on page 14. A lot of the pairs, the salary seems to have gone down. I'd like to believe that it's possible, but I don't think so.
On page 14?
On page 14, yep. I'm going to go over that more right now.
The previous year may not have been correct, Jim, I hate to say that, but we really did not concentrate on 14, 15,
Okay.
okay? So, these are all verified.
So the 15, 16 is
15,
better.
16, yeah, I cannot take any responsibility for 14, 15.
Okay.
Doesn't the city every year have an audit of the city's finances then?
It has to be completed by Friday. We're almost done.
And doesn't that audit ever, being that we're a board of the city, don't they ever audit what we do over here?
Very extensively.
And
It's been excruciating.
every year?
Currently.
Every year.
It's done every year?
They do it every
It's
year.
done every year.
Yes.
So how did these audits every year miss all of this?
They don't audit every line item in the budget. They select random items. It's not a complete, I guess the catchphrase lately is forensic. It's not a forensic audit of every single expense the Board of Ed does. What the auditor does is the auditor specifically picks certain line items and goes through and checks the transactions, and if everything matches and balances, you're golden. If you have to make adjustments and they're unhappy with the items they've selected, they will expand their search until they feel that they have a level of comfort that this reporting is correct, substantially correct.
But they've never, in my 8 years, have ever found anything wrong with the way the Board of Ed is accounted.
Every year there's been issues, every year. There's adjustments made every single year.
That was
This
just-
audit shows states that we have not yearly, year in and year out. Our accounting has been,
There's coding errors happen. Someone's supposed to be charged to account 1511111.05, and they got charged to 115111 because someone transposed two numbers. It's an easily explainable thing. It gets corrected, adjusted, you move on. They're looking for serious or egregious abuse of money. If it's a simple coding error and it's something that can be cleaned up and explained, then okay. If it's an accounting practice that you do, they can say, we want you to do it this way, but you can show for 5 years it's been done a different way. You don't have to change the way you're doing it because you've substantiated it, providing it's not illegal. But we just learned in seeing the audit reports personally, seeing the audit report for the first time over the last several years, the auditor has actually pointed out in the last 2 audits that the Board of Ed financial department is understaffed and is in need of expansion. Now, I have never been shown that audit report and didn't know every year we have cut someone from the financial office of the board, but for the last 2 years, they've actually cited us this year as being grossly understaffed in the financial office of the board. And their recommendation is an immediate correction to that. We don't have the money to do that, but we're going to have to look at that in this upcoming budget year. But those audit reports never made it to us, because once the audit was balanced, it's held at the city. We could always go down and look at it. It never came to us. So this year, the goal, now that I've actually seen the audit report, is to get that audit report to the board, so that we'll see if any comments the auditors made, any corrections they've recommended, any course of action they recommend. We'll actually see that as a board, so
Why have we not seen it before?
it's just never brought forward. We were never told there was any deficiencies. It was always have audits done, good, everybody's happy, and it got filed away, Bill, to be honest with
Okay.
you. And this year, I saw the interim reports for the audit, so I asked to see last year's audit report. Then I asked to see the year before's audit report. Specifically,
but
the
if they were
section that
red
stated-
flagging things, then that would have maybe or maybe not influenced the board to
Yes.
look at who's in Midgeon Avenue, what they're doing.
Our whole procedures, our whole practices and procedures, the way we do things, yes, the audit report should have made it to the board. It never has. Was unaware that there were deficiencies to the level that have been stated in the audit. So, yes, again.
Just the other concern that I had was the fact that the audit was going on when budget hadn't yet even vetted the year-end numbers. So I feel strongly that budget should be approving the year-end financials that are the Board of Ed's financials. The board looking at them prior to the audit. So they're auditing records that the board hadn't even agreed that that was the final year-end numbers. So I think it's brought out several things of the audit report, and there are financials, whoever the Board of Ed is, it's their financials.
That's even the ED-001 form. The ED-001 form has to be filed before you have your year end. I mean, the year-end numbers are nowhere near done, but you have to file with the state your year-end numbers. So they put in as close as they can, and then in October you file an amended ED-001 that's due by December 31st. That's your actual numbers. So you give them numbers to keep everybody happy, and then in December you give them the actual numbers. Why they do it, I have no idea.
Right?
But that's the way it works.
Hearing many different administrations over the years, and I can even remember before being on the board, your wife speaking about this issue, Mrs. Trout. It's amazing that you can have year in and year out different administrations tell you they're doing one thing as far as the veracity and integrity of the budget process, and we're here today knowing that doesn't really happen, hasn't happened. Thankfully, Fiona's been super aggressive. But,
It's a good word. It's a good analogy.
but,
I think that's enough.
Tenacious is a good word.
Yeah, real good working.
Well, I think, honestly, I hate to say it, because I don't want to jinx anybody, but we have, right now, at least as far as the salaries and going into this year and closing out last year, we actually have a number. And, you know, it's not just that we got to a point and said, we're just going to deal with it. It was actually beaten to death to try to get that number where that number is supposed to be the number. And,
Because you can't move forward if you don't know where you are.
yes, very hard. So again, I know a lot of hours were put in, a lot of phone calls were put in, and I think we have a good set of numbers.
Ken,
Yes?
I think the history of our involvement with the audit is a good argument against the idea that the board should, we're accused of micromanaging. And maybe there are times when we are right to micromanage. And anyone who thinks that's not the case should review this.
I will agree with you wholeheartedly. We get accused of it quite often, and there are times, this is a great example. I mean, we're always told it's all set, we're told it worked out, we're told everything balanced, we're told our year end is good. And, you know, there weren't any, jump off the page problems, but, you know, you do see trends of where things, the same thing got fixed year after year after year after year. And you know, again, if your hand's sore, take it out of the door jamb before you close the door. And eventually, you should learn to remove your hand. But hopefully, we're starting on a good path. We have, last year's budget, as painful as it was, we broke down things to a level they've never been broken down to before, accused of micromanaging, but I think we're finally moving in a good direction. Thank you, guys. Large project. Okay, H, Bill, discussion of TV.
Yeah, I was approached a few weeks ago by a resident who was surprised that the board meetings were no longer being televised, and asked me if I knew what the reason for that was. I said I didn't, that I would check into it, so I emailed the chairman and was surprised to surprised to find that it had been taken out of the budget. I didn't remember us having discussed it or voted it on anything, and I was even more surprised when I was talking with Dan about it earlier this evening and found out that there actually was a vote on it that I don't remember. You know, I would hope that this would be able to be restored, because a lot of people have come up to me and said that they watched the Board of Ed meetings on TV and instead of coming to the meetings, and this is their access to our meetings, and the last thing I want to do is restrict someone's access to our proceedings.
Well, to echo the assistant superintendent's sentiments earlier, it is a sickness. I do find myself on the road 10 months out of the year, and I find myself watching other boards' meetings to see how they do things. It is a sick fascination. It was removed as a budget reduction, but we'll go to Walking Man Media. Our time slot, I do understand, has been taken.
Time slot has been offered to Litchfield, so it's still available, but I don't know how long.
Right.
I can find out if you'd
The
like.
discussion was because now that you were videoing them, they're all put up on the website, I think was the reason of
Yes.
why people didn't want to spend the money.
Yes, the full video of the board meeting is available on the website. So having it live streamed was a thought that we could reduce the live streaming of it, because the person can watch it a few days from now.
What about those who don't have computers, don't have that access?
It's true.
I believe Cablevision offers a solution where you can watch the board meetings 4 times a month. They'll actually put it on air, if I remember correctly.
Well, that was only because we were televised there. Now that we are no longer televised,
They will
and we
know.
are not offered, we're off the air. But that was something they did. They were run at obscure hours. Do
18.
you happen to remember the cost?
The cost per meeting was $325.
For them to air it?
No, not for them to air. That was my that was my
What
my
is their
billing.
cost to air it?
They do not charge.
No, our cost would be the new equipment we'd have to buy to do the modulation for the new system.
Correct.
Oh, that's right.
You're using equipment that is
Not the-
roughly 20 years old
it's
in the
not
system right
compatible
now.
with digital signal.
Well, when did they come back into, we were doing this up until when?
Last year.
Broadcasting.
Last year.
When was the last broadcast on TV?
Um,
June, I think.
was
We
at least
just noticed
at
that
least
we
a few
needed to
months
go
ago.
digital,
Yeah, I mean,
and
that
they were
discussion
going
was a
to
couple of years
digital
old.
system, and we didn't have the money.
The person who came to me and asked the question, and is a regular viewer of our meetings, said that it was, the first time she noticed that it wasn't on was our last regular meeting.
Well, that's true. We don't televise the summer meetings because they're down at Midgeon Avenue. This is the only building that has the ability to broadcast a signal.
Yeah,
We had the ability to broadcast a signal to Cablevision.
They shut down for a couple of weeks in August to make that transition. If you're looking for the timeline on that, it was August that it became impossible for us with our obsolete equipment to make our broadcast. But
If I can say something, there's a slight correction in that, okay? I have just met with Cablevision this week, and they are going to change to full digital, which you will have problems at that point. Right now, it's still available with the equipment that we have currently to do the broadcast. So as of today, it is still available. The timeline that I was told by a Cablevision employee was the first of the year they're looking to go all digital. That is not to say that it'll be all digital at the first of the year. That is the goal that they're setting, but there's been nothing official put out there that they'll be achieving that goal on the first of the year. So you do have several months to consider. The equipment that you have right now is analog equipment that is converted to a digital signal and that is put forth. It is not optimum, it's not the best, and there are improvements that need to be made. As far as cost goes, I do not know all of the costs that are incurred with the hub system that's currently here and what would have to be replaced. So there is future considerations that you'd have to work out in your budget.
Well, then I don't understand why, if we were able to continue on at no additional cost, then why did we drop it?
Well, originally, we were told it was an August termination, and that the signal was going. It's kind of like,
Who told you that?
Cablevision did
Oh,
back
they
in the spring.
notified.
And it was,
Yeah,
that we weren't
remember,
going to be able to
Andrew,
continue.
last year, we had the big issue with the fact that nobody could hear us on television.
Right.
And we're all complaining because, well, they can see us, but they can't hear us and so forth. Then we went through, we had Cablevision come in and test our lines, and that's where they figured out our problem was. And we got a general estimate, which I don't remember what the cost was, to replace the lines and then replace the equipment. And that came into several $1,000s. And then the cost for the meeting, which was $325.
$325, correct.
For every meeting, times 10 meetings, we were scrimping and saving for every last dime we would get. That's where it came from.
Yes, Jeff.
I think it's important that we have Board of Education meetings broadcast for a couple reasons, the most obvious of which is community involvement, community awareness. We're also pretty entertaining. I think the most entertaining night of television I have ever had was when a superintendent of schools a few years ago tried to, you know the meeting I'm talking about, okay, so I can stop. But, and also, on a personal level, my goal for next year has been to sit there watching these meetings with a mute button in hand. And I appeal to you, don't take that away from me.
All right, well,
No, seriously,
I'll have to take the
the
job.
public, people do watch those meetings.
They do.
As you say, gluttons for punishment or
In fact,
diversions maybe.
before I became a board member, that's how I stayed apprised of what was happening.
Is there any way you can get Cablevision to donate the equipment to us, since it is their community as well?
You can always ask. They weren't exactly ambitious about it last year, but it's in a year, sort of.
There's a cable advisory board that we have. Don't we, as a school system, have an appointee to that cable vision? Oh. Well, that would, oh, okay.
You didn't know that.
No.
Perhaps that is a member of the cable advisory
Or designated.
But that's,
board. Yeah, or designated. Joe's got his.
Oh, should we just keep looking for the right
Well, I
one?
came to this meeting, Jane, you can't
That
follow
was
me.
going to end with Dave.
perhaps we could find somebody who actually wanted to do that, was local, we're a local person, and would work for us at the Cablevision company. Rather than giving it to someone who doesn't even know she has it and doesn't want it and would have to drive many miles to fulfill
I do not
those
know.
duties.
No, I understand. It was just the last superintendent was our designee on that panel.
Ken, do you
Yes,
know
sir.
City Hall is set up to, do they have an infrastructure in which?
Never
I
seen
mean-
a city hall meeting now.
When the building was renovated and infrastructure was installed in there to televise the meetings, but I don't know what their system is. I don't know if it's analog, digital. I have no idea what it is.
No? That's a nice place for us to go.
They have soft chairs.
And they have nice chairs there too.
I've always
So-
commented on the chairs.
Their meetings are not televised, so I have no idea what their system is.
Yeah. I'd have to find out what the wiring is. I have no idea.
Might be a solution.
Yeah.
Anybody want to be on that little subcommittee?
Well, we have an action item coming up. We have an action item coming up for it. This was just our discussion item. So we'll move that, the volunteering of someone to be on that committee for the action item. Okay, action items. We have approval of out-of-state and overnight field trips. We have 2 of them in the packet. One is the THS chorus and chamber choir going to an adjudication, it says, and Six Flags New England afterwards. The trip is on May 20th. The need is one substitute, cost is $100, last cost of the substitute is $100 a day. The rest of the cost of the trip is being borne by the students,
They're doing a fundraising.
fundraising. It's projected to be $100 per person. Yes, go ahead.
Question, I'm confused on page 2.
Oh, actually, hang on. Can I get a motion for these two field trips?
So moved.
Second,
All right, Dan, Bill, okay, discussion.
On page 2 of the first one, down at the bottom, it says, paras may be needed for students and will need a stipend for food costs and
That part.
after.
Yes. It's not identified as a cost to us as of yet.
Why wouldn't it be though, if the trip is happening in May of 16, we obviously would know who the kids were, right?
One would assume.
And if that's,
I think what she's saying up at the top is that she has 43 kids enrolled right now, but that at this point, because it's so early, not all of them have chosen to attend, she doesn't know. So she has some kids who have paras who may be among those who choose not to attend. But I think that's why she's saying, we don't know.
But we would need, I mean, we're gonna approve a cost to the district.
Right.
We would need a projected cost to say,
the worst.
yeah, you know, worst case scenario, this is what we
Okay.
are gonna spend. So let's,
Because the same with the next one has,
Yes.
one possible attendee has diabetes.
and the second trip is the ROTC. The date of the trip is December 3rd of this year. 2 chaperones, 1 teacher, 1 other staff, or, I'm sorry, 2 teachers, 1 other staff, 1 parent volunteer. Number of students is... And they're fundraising the second one. We went to the 9/11 museum.
There's a lot of kids, because the museum can't take for it, and 35, take for it.
It doesn't say that